And so last question for me, Mr. Chair, and I don't know if someone here is from EDD. I'm curious, the examples, when we think about paid family leave, the examples we cite, as you did, as proponents did, are pregnant women. And I'm curious, and then I'm always amused by that personally and professionally. As an employer of a 500 employee organization, my first employee who took advantage of paid family leave when it became law was a man whose wife had twins who were medically fragile. And so do we know in categories who takes paid family leave? Is it always pregnancy where it augments disability insurance for those who could qualify? Because as an adoptive member, as an adoptive mother, all I got was paid family leave. But do we know the categories in terms of, is it pregnancy related, taking care of a sick child, sick family member? Where are the blocks? Because some of those, the pregnancy example isn't germane. See what I'm saying? So I'm curious about. You follow me?
Men, right.
Yeah, so we definitely have that information, and one of the things that we have seen over the last 10 years that the claims for men have actually increased over the last 10 years, and the increases for men taking time to bond with their child has increased, but those are also what's driving the spike of the higher incomes, because men tend to
have the higher
incomes, right? But then what you actually look at for care claims, you have more women taking time off to actually care for a sick child or a relative, and the people who are in the lower income brackets, more of them are women,
right,
than men.
Since we only make pennies to the dollar anyway.
So you actually have a system that's right now we have a system that's exacerbating income and disparity and opportunity and benefits, right? Our program, it's a good program, but it's actually making the disparity even worse amongst the genders, amongst the classes, amongst the races. It's actually making things worse because we don't take into account that people start off at different places, that a poor Latina woman, a poor black woman is going to make less, and they're going to have less of a job protection that they can actually take the time off.
And across their lifetimes.
Across their lifetimes.
Okay, all good points, but that's not answering my question. So my question is,
I think I got it.
if I lean in, I'm going to help her get these words out. Thank you, Mr. Member.
I'm waiting.
What are the categories? What percentage of people are taking the leave for what reasons?
So right now, most of the claims are for bonding, 67%.
Okay, those. Okay.
67% are female, 32% are male.
Okay.
And the total care claims are
10% are for caregiving claims. That's for an ill relative.
Okay, so beyond the 67%, so the rest is sick child, sick parent. We don't know.
It's 90%. So out of the state disability insurance fund, 12% goes to paid family leave. Out of that 12%, 90% goes to bonding, 10% goes to caregiving.
Correct.
And of the bonding claims, approximately 30% of the bonding claims are filed by men. Or 32%.
Got it. Correct. I wasn't really asking the gender. I was trying to get a sense of the categories of the reasons people are taking paid family leave.
Yeah.
To get a sense of what percentage aren't falling under the SDI category.
How much of the money? So, and out of the people that take the, paid family leave versus SDI, it's 25% of the claimants are people who are taking paid family leave, but it's only 12% of the fund that's being used for paid family leave.
Got it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate your indulgence and your clarification.
Senator Jackson.
Thank you. And I certainly appreciate this discussion. I have been very interested in the paid family leave issue, done a number of bills on it, proud to have a job killer bill this year, which will give protections to those taking leave. But as the chair of the Legislative Women's Caucus, with an initiative this year, which is building a stronger California by creating opportunities for economic opportunities for women, I find this discussion a little unsettling because it is distressing to me that we might be pitting families against anyone else. So we have disabled workers. I completely understand the concern. But here we are in a world today where we do very little in this country to acknowledge the family relationship, particularly with newborns, and particularly in caring for loved ones in a society where in California we are now the second most multi-generational state in the country, meaning grandchildren living with grandparents and vice versa, and parents, women primarily caring for sick parents. We're an aging population now in California. We are going to see the increase of 55 years of age and older increasing by 70% at 2020. From 2010 to 2070, it will have been a 70% increase in the aging of this community. So who's going to take care of our family members? We certainly have totally inadequate infrastructure for people aging, and certainly for our most senior people. So it seems to me that when we talk about the needs of this state, we've got to start focusing on family. And when we talk about the difference between paid family leave and SDI, paid family leave is for 6 weeks only, but SDI could be up to a year or 2 years. So we already have distinctions. In fact, SDI isn't taxed, but paid family leave is taxed. So there are already distinctions in the system. Should they be corrected? Absolutely. We should do more to recognize and honor families in this state and in this country. But that being said, right now we have an opportunity, whether because it's sexy or because we have articulate people coming before us and in other legislatures saying, how do we bond with our children? How do I take care of my sick grandparent? How do I take care of my child who has these extraordinary needs? I was in tears too. I'm a grandma, so I've got a 2-year-old granddaughter, and I could think, my goodness, if she were born with some of the needs of this child and what we all would do to try to help those children, and as a society, what we should all do. So I think that perhaps this is a discussion whose time has come. In fact, for some of us, it's a discussion long overdue. We don't give enough in family leave. Yes, indeed, it's interesting. I suspect our friends on the business side are kind of enjoying the fact that we're seeing a little disagreement between brothers and sisters who otherwise usually get along very well. I think at this point, we really need to move forward on this concept. And granted, yes, we don't do enough for the injured worker. There's no question about that. But right now we have an opportunity, whether it's because the discussions on a national level and on a statewide level are focusing on how we care for the next generation, how we care for the newest and youngest among us. How do we bond? How do we make sure the children have an opportunity? And I will posit to you, as watching my daughter try to work full-time and to make sure that her child has quality child care, the stress level, when that care isn't available, I would suspect impacts all of young mothers and fathers too, who are trying to juggle all those balls in the air and can't give 100% necessarily at their employment because their concerns are, how are my children being taken care of? What is being done to care for them? So I think from an economic perspective, as well as whether an equity perspective, social justice, or just simply a commitment to family, which is I think so critically important if we're going to move this society forward. I would like to see this bill move forward. I know that Assemblymember Gomez is a brother to the unions, and I think that good points have been made. Absolutely. But the notion of job protection, yes. There is usually a reason we don't hear from our friends in the corporate world as to why they're not objecting. Yes, it is 100% paid for by employees. And if it weren't, I suspect it would be a job killer and we wouldn't make any progress. So if employees are prepared to pay for their own benefit, we should definitely do that. If we see that, and I agree with Sister Mitchell over here, that if we start giving higher awards, we'll start seeing people in the lower income levels taking them, because 55% of nothing is nothing. But if it's 55 or 70, or I shouldn't say nothing, if it's 55% of minimum wage, people can't afford it. If it's 75%, it's more likely that there's a few more pennies in their pockets that would allow them and encourage them to take the time off to bond with their children. So job protection, excellent point. I think if there's a way we can move forward on this without really alienating our brothers and sisters who are who are suffering from work-related disabilities. I think that makes sense as well. But my goodness, we sometimes just have to take those steps forward, and hopefully it will provide the basis and the foundation to move forward for everyone. And so with that, I'm going to move the bill. And thank everyone for the discussion. But, on behalf of the Legislative Women's Caucus, this is our moment, whether it's sexy. We're sexy now, we're going to go for it. And so appreciate that, and with that, would move the bill. I also, by the way, because this is an issue I've been very interested in, I have here, we had asked the Senate Office of Research to do an analysis of our paid family leave program. I have a few copies if anyone would like them on the dais, and then we can get more, and certainly happy to continue working with my sister Angie going forward on this.
Thank you. I know Angie wants to say answer that. We're going to have Senator.
If I may, thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Jackson. Very brief response. Number one, I appreciate everything that you've said, Senator Jackson, and agree. I would merely just like to add another dimension, and that is just like we should be looking at building family-friendly based policies, we have to be realistic about what's happening in the labor market. And that is, people are working longer, they're working till they're older, retirements, the lack of defined pensions means that people can't retire. What's happened in the marketplace? It means that people can't retire, and that means people are working till they're older. And that's what makes disability insurance so important. So I'm not going to deny anything that you've said. I would just merely like to add another dimension, which is these are trend lines. Just like people are getting older and we're going to have to take care for our older parents are going to have to keep working because they can't survive on eating cat food. And that's where we're going, right? Number one. And number two, just to acknowledge that there are 3 states now with paid family leave. I just doing all this research, Rhode Island. I don't know enough about Rhode Island's program, but New Jersey and California. And both these states built on a state disability insurance system. The reason why we have paid family leave in California is because we've had a state disability insurance since 1946 under Earl Warren. We had the structure in place to do the contribution rates, the benefits, all of that was in place, and we were able to build paid family leave off of that. So I just think that when we're talking about paid family leave, we need to acknowledge that the only reason why we have this program, in my opinion, besides the tremendous advocacy of the coalition, is that we had a system in place that we can build off of. And there's a reason why no other states have been able to cross that Rubicon. They don't have a disability insurance system. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Point.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My 2 very able colleagues have asked some very important questions and have put some interesting frames around the debate. I'm not going, it is challenging, of course, when we have differences of opinion within the labor family, but I think that as with any situation that needs addressing, and I think we all have acknowledged that to see the very low rates of usage among those earning the least is a big problem, and that we have to do something about it. We can't just shrug our shoulders and walk away from it. So for those in opposition to the bill, there, I think, is the obligation to offer some direction as to where the compromise, don't have to have the answer to the compromise today, but how are we going to get there? Because we can't just turn around and walk away from it. Because the lowest wage earners, and this is exactly why the author has brought the bill forward, are paying into a system and they can't get the benefit from it. That's wrong. I was just taking some notes as you were making your presentation, Ms. Way, because you threw a lot of information at us, all beneficial, all beneficial. I think at the end of your third question, you asked, should all workers pay for a benefit that will go to the highest paid workers? And that's exactly the point that Senator Mitchell led with. And that presupposes that these rates aren't going to change. So I don't know who does those kinds of projections, if it's EDD, or if we were to make these changes, how would we see those numbers begin to change? But then to the author, I would ask a number of additional questions, as have already been raised, but do we know if 80% of minimum wage is going to be sufficient to change these numbers? I don't know that we have the answer to that question. So as challenging as it may be for us to be having this conversation, I think it's terrific that we're now, number one, having it, and that we're having it in a very public setting. This is when we're doing our work the best. And I understand that you would have preferred not to be doing it here, and that's, if I understand it correctly, the reason why there wasn't labor opposition in the first House, and that we're hearing about it now, and that some of the information is getting to us late. It's not analyzed in the analysis. So we have an opportunity. This is keyed fiscal. So our vote today would be to move it to appropriations. It's in some ways a process question. Do we want to continue to work on it here in the policy committee? Do we pass it to the fiscal committee and then not only expect that they would, in appropriations, figure out the answers to all the questions we're raising here today? I would never speak for the chair, but I would imagine that the chair / the committee, if we didn't feel that our questions were answered, would want to revisit it here in policy committee before passing it to the floor, because there are a lot of unanswered questions. And I'm both by proponents and opponents. And I don't have the answers today. I certainly don't also want to shrug my shoulders and just walk away from a very serious concern that Assemblyman Gomez has brought to us today. So it has to be addressed. And again, I don't have the answers today, but I think we need to do our best to get those answers so that we can resolve a lot of these unanswered questions.
Make sure we have any more questions so you can answer them all at one time. Any more questions?
A lot of questions
to
answered,
know
but
Senator Mitchell had yes, a long list right now.
My first, it's a question of Ms. Way, and then I'm going to ask the Assembly member to cover 2 points in your close.
Okay.
And so for Ms. Way, is it, and I may be opening Pandora's box, so I'll acknowledge that, is it time for us to have a meaningful conversation about making some adjustments to the state disability insurance program? Is that appropriate? Outside of the context of this bill, I mean.
Yes, I think it's appropriate to look at, and going to kind of merging Senator Leonard's points and yours, this is where we would like to look at. Can we do benefit increases targeted towards low-wage workers across the board, state disability insurance and paid family leave? Figure out how to target that the contribution rate increase to the lowest wage workers and do it across the board for both programs. And how much would that cost?
Since they are connected.
How much would they cost? How much would the benefit increase cost? Who would get it? And then for policymakers decide, is that worth it? But that is a place that we would be happy and willing and wanting to have that discussion.
So for Assembly member, if in your closing you would respond to 2 things. Number one, how did you arrive at your tier levels? We talked about the sweet spot, do we know it, do we not? So I'd be interested in hearing your theory and rationale about how you arrived at the particular levels. And how you would respond to Ms. Way's point around SDI disparity. I am clear that government-sponsored basic need programs are not popular. We have a hard time getting increased investments in them. They just aren't. And that paid family leave has been the beneficiary of a national focused momentum. And so, basically in your closing, if you could talk about how you respond to the disparity and why you chose to focus on paid family leave in your bill as opposed to a broader approach. Because, like I said, the basic needs programs that government provides have a very difficult time, as we've just experienced in this budget cycle in getting the attention they deserve and additional resources. We've cut COLAs over the past couple of years, so they're not benefiting from the tidal wave of support and popularity of a paid family leave. So if you would address that in your closing, and thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we could go ahead and proceed to Senator Gomez. Go ahead and
All right.
close.
Can we let the witnesses go? Thank you very much. I need room, because there's a lot of questions. Now, first, I feel I need to address a lot of the questions and concerns that were raised by the opposition, and just kind of point out just numerous things. So first and foremost, the first question was, should there be a bifurcated program, right? Should there be a difference between SDI and there should be a difference between paid family leave?
Right.
There's no inherent reason why those programs have to be the same. And that's why when this legislature passed the paid family leave bill, they weren't the same, right? One has a 6 weeks leave, and the other one has up to 52 weeks of leave. So they're inherently different, and you're trying to do two inherently different things, right? One of the things that we recognize is that there is an incentive. We need to find an incentive to get people to take the time off to actually take care of their sick family member or to bond with the child, because when they're given a choice, they understand that the child will continue to maybe live and be taken care of it, but the bonding, the quality of the bonding is not going to be there if they don't take that time off. So the programs are inherently different. Although I would love to see an increase for the entire program, it is fiscally not doable unless there is an employer contribution component. And in the perfect world, we can maybe do that. But this is not the perfect rule. This is a place where we have to pass a piece of legislation through a process in both houses and then get the signature of a governor. And in the assembly, it's become, in some committees and even on the floor, it's more difficult to pass those kind of pieces of legislation. So mine is dealing with a paid family leave program that I've seen as inherently unfair, unequitable, and doesn't serve thousands of Californians. And that's what we're trying to do. My bill also doesn't deal with the drought, but it doesn't mean that the drought isn't an important issue, right? It doesn't deal with job creation, but it doesn't mean that job creation is an important issue. My bill deals with one specific part of a program that's problematic, that is not fully utilized, and especially for the folks that pay into it. So we have thousands of poor people that will never, ever be able to take advantage of either of these programs, right? You see a higher use of in SDI because when you're actually injured and disabled, you have no choice but to take that time off. And I do feel for those workers, and I feel that we should try to increase that rate. But that is another debate for another bill. Right? My bill is meant to how do we increase paid family leave, and I believe that the tier system would get us there. It's almost like tiered systems are not new. We're actually starting to look at a lot of our programs that we have implemented in the past and starting to ask ourselves, are those truly fair programs, right? You know, Kevin DeLeon introduced a bill that deals with the rebate for energy efficient vehicles in order for those at the lowest income levels of the economic ladder would actually get to use that program, because he knows that the folks at the lowest income, a $7,000 rebate is not going to buy them a $40,000 new electric vehicle, and that those people are paying into a program that they're never going to use. Earned income tax credit. We recognize that different levels need to have different benefits in order for them to actually benefit from those programs. So we've done that. And what I did is actually looked at numerous modeling to make sure that the program would be sound, that the employee contributions wouldn't increase too much. That was one of the first things I looked at, because I knew that that would be a concern. So I ended up looking at modeling out 80% rate right across the board, 75, and realized that those rates would only exacerbate the inequity in our current structure. That would say that those who are currently making the most are going to get even more, and those that are making the least are going to still not do very well and not be able to take advantage of a program they pay into. So I did the modeling in order to reduce the strain and the adequacy of the fund. I actually modeled, and I'll share those modelings with all of you if you like, to what would it cost actually to increase this benefit. And one of the things we discovered is that increasing the wage replacement is relatively inexpensive, right? It's the expansion of the 6 to 10 weeks that makes it a little bit more costly, because it's the folks at the higher income brackets that will actually utilize it still at the same, say we assume the same rate, it's going to bump it up. Assume that we have a little bit more, it's going to bump it a little bit more. But those folks at I could have left it. If they would have said, oh, we don't want those folks at the higher income brackets to see more, we could have left it at 55%. But it's those folks that are also preying into the system. And it's also a fundamental fairness for them as well, that they're paying more dollars into the system, and we have to make sure that we don't lose the support of the middle class and the upper middle class when it comes to these important programs. So the rate increase from 55 to 65 was meant to accomplish that. So when we actually funded it out, the amount is very, very, the amount is not that much. A person that's who's making $36,000 a year would see their increase from for their contribution rate, and we're not assuming the 30% increase that the Labor Fed has presented. That is so far out of whack that it is laughable, because you're not going to have that much of an increase. The Appropriations Committee, who helped me kind of draft a lot of the fiscal analysis of the bill, while talking to EDD to make sure that we didn't see a sharp spike in the contribution rates, looked at more about a 0.13 increase. And what really that comes down to is maybe a price of a candy bar a week, less than $1 a week out of a person that makes a median income of $36,000 a year. So you're not going to see this major spike that people are assuming. And that is a worst case scenario. So is there anything else that I missed? Because there was a lot of stuff that she put out there. So should workers pay for a benefit increase that some employers already offer voluntarily? We have to deal with what we can control, right? And what we control is the wage replacement rate for the program. We can't control if the employers are going to give more or less, right? In their letter, it actually says that you're going to have an employer who's an employer go from covering 45% of the paid family leave time off for that particular worker, if you look at the letter, and 45%, the top off amount, and it's going to go, and their contribution is going to drop down to 20 while the state picks up 80. Most of those workers, first and foremost, that's what another falsehood of that letter is, that the people that are getting 80% of the wage replacement are the ones that are making minimum wage or less. And which workers who are making minimum wage or less work at for an employer that's actually got to top off their paid family leave? Probably none, right? It is those, so the folks that are getting topped off are still going to have to pay 35% of that paid family leave. They're still going to have to cover the a good chunk of that the employee's time off. So a lot of these concerns listed here are exaggerations at best and are devoid of reality. So we're going to give you some facts and figures, some spreadsheets and modeling that we did, and we will share it with the Appropriations Committee in the Senate. Because after I became the chair of Appropriations in the Assembly, I became more nitpicky when it comes to the cost of bills than I ever have previously. Yes. Because I know that these programs have to be paid for. But right now, we do have a paid-for program that's paid for. It's sound. It's robust. It has a reserve. But the people who actually pay into it at the lowest economic ladder are not getting any of the benefits. So I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you so much for your closings.
Yeah, Senator, question, just the last comment before we take our vote. So I will be supporting the bill today. I think appropriations, given you've already mentioned, has helped you with some of your modeling, probably can help answer some of our questions better than the policy committee, because it is a number crunching exercise that will potentially answer the questions that we have before us. But before I can support it on the floor, I need to get some of these questions answered. So appropriations is a fine place to do it. We also have the benefit of the second year of a 2-year session. I'm not suggesting that's where this bill would be heading, but there's nothing wrong with using the full 2 years to get these questions answered. From my perspective, they need to be answered. So I will support the bill so we can get to the committee that can answer some of these questions better than we can here, but there are a lot of questions yet to be answered.
Let me go back to a question that you had. Is 80% of minimum wage sufficient to change these numbers, to increase? The
participation rate.
Paid family leave are subject to federal income tax, but they're not to state income tax and other deductions. So the 80% is actually closer to 90% of wage replacement in all actuality. And that's another reason why I picked the 80% for people making minimum wage or less, understanding that it would almost be their full salary. So if they're already struggling but living off of their minimum wage, this is as close and as good as we're going to get when it comes to this program, as it's currently funded, without jacking up the contribution rates. So, and that's why also the 75%, I believe, will actually increase the participation rate, because we know that will be almost 80%, 80 to 85% of the real wages will be going back into their pocket when they're taking that paid family leave off. So I've thought about this inside and out and trying to make sure that we're balancing the program. And yes, did I get bipartisan support in the Assembly? Yes. Did Republicans actually in the Assembly like the tiered system? Yes. But does that mean it's a bad idea? No. I actually think that they've seen the light and understand that this program is not a fringe program, but something that's fundamental to working families here in California, even in their districts.
And I think, going back to a little bit what you're saying, that it does offer an opportunity for even that 80% to take advantage of it. I think for most workers, I think, especially the lower income levels, they do have a concern as far as, are they going to have their job back, which most likely they probably won't, right? Well, after yours, probably be helpful. But you're right. But if they're at that moment where they have to do it no matter what, then I think it's good to have it at least at that level. So I know you have another question,
if
Senator.
I could just suggest, a lot of the information, I think the statistics and all are here. We did ask the Senate Office of Research to do an analysis. It's came out about a year ago, but it does have a lot of that data that I think will help all of us going forward as well. So I would commend that to you, and we do have a number of copies, and I think it will be helpful. So thank you.
And just very quickly, I wanted to say I appreciate the political sensitivity of this issue. And Ms. Way's comment about really not wanting to come out in opposition and trying to work it out ahead of time. I would just go back to the point about the analysis. You know, the analysis is an official record that will follow the bill. As a former committee consultant, I had left here and would get calls for years to court orders to appear to testify to the original legislative intent of a piece of legislation. And so this is really just a broader kind of comment that, you know, the analysis is critical because it becomes a part of the official record that will follow, and particularly a bill like this that will be looked back on, whether it passes or not, in the future as we attempt to build legislation or if we attempt to do the SDIP. So I appreciate the political sensitivity, but again, I guess my comment is broader about why it's so important that all positions on a bill are reflected in the analysis, because it becomes a part of what is often too many times oral history in this building, and with term limits and folks leaving, we lose the core integrity and the legislative intent of what was desired at the onset. So I wanted to say I appreciate the political sensitivity, but I wanted to make that clarifying comment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. And seeing no more questions, I just want to thank the author for bringing this bill forward. I will be supporting it, and I appreciate the author answering all the questions that have been brought forward. I want to thank the supporters and the opposition for stepping up and viewing their respective positions and offering this robust discussion. I also want to encourage the author to continue working with the opposition, especially as it goes to the next committee with appropriations to maybe finalize any other outstanding disagreements that can be worked out. But with that, Madam Secretary, we do have a motion. Please call the roll.
Motion is due pass to appropriations. Mendoza?
Aye.
Mendoza, aye. Stone?
No.
Stone, no. Jackson?
Aye.
Jackson, aye. Leno?
Aye.
Leno, aye. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mitchell, aye.
Okay, you have 4-1. Bill is out.